All right, so today we're diving into some excerpts from Zhuangzi,
Okay.
the Chinese philosopher.
Right, right.
You know, the one who loved a good parable.
Yeah, yeah.
And we're going to be exploring his ideas on freedom and navigating a complex world,
Mm,
especially this fascinating concept of uselessness
yeah.
and how it connects to living a fulfilling life.
Yes, Zhuangzi really flips the script on what we usually consider valuable.
Yeah,
He encourages us to question those assumptions
I love that.
and really examine how chasing after usefulness might actually be a trap.
Okay, so there's this story about Zhuangzi coming across a big, healthy tree
Right.
that the woodcutters have completely ignored, calling
Yeah.
it useless.
Mm-hmm.
And Zhuangzi points out that it's precisely this uselessness that has allowed it to flourish.
Right.
It's such a counterintuitive idea.
It
I
is.
mean, isn't that almost a metaphor for life in general?
It is.
Yeah.
The parable of the useless tree really sets the stage for so much of what Zhuangzi teaches. It highlights this central paradox.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes being overlooked, being seen as having no practical value, can be a source of strength and longevity.
Hmm.
Think about it often. What society deems valuable comes with all sorts of burdens and expectations,
Right?
while uselessness offers a kind of unexpected freedom.
That makes a lot of sense. But then we have the story of the goose, right?
Yes, the silent goose.
The one that ends up getting killed for not honking.
Right.
Now, this seems to contradict the whole uselessness is good idea.
Okay.
If the tree thrived because it was useless,
Mm.
shouldn't the goose have been spared too?
Yeah.
It's a bit perplexing, isn't it?
That's where Zhuangzi's thinking gets really nuanced.
Okay.
He's not advocating for literal uselessness,
Okay.
but using these stories to point us towards a deeper understanding.
Right.
The goose story cautions us against rigidly clinging to any one principle.
Mm.
Even the idea of embracing uselessness. Life
Mhm.
is messy, and we need to navigate these apparent contradictions, finding balance and adapting to constantly changing circumstances.
So it's not about striving to be totally unproductive or rejecting everything society values.
Exactly. Zhuangzi wants us to move beyond this binary thinking of useful versus useless.
Okay.
He uses this beautiful analogy of floating along with the way,
Mm-hmm.
this natural flow of existence. To be
Yeah.
truly free, we need to let go of clinging to labels,
Yeah.
categories, and societal expectations,
Okay.
including the pressure to be useful in a conventional sense.
Okay, so we're not just talking about literal uselessness,
Yeah,
but more of an internal state of being.
right.
But how do we actually tap into this way in a practical way?
Yeah.
I mean, we can't all just go live as hermits, can we?
Of course not.
Right.
It's about cultivating a different way of seeing and being in the world.
Okay.
Think about the story of Duke Liu.
Okay.
He's followed all the traditional paths to peace and fulfillment,
Mm-hmm.
yet he's utterly burdened by his position.
Right.
He represents the opposite of uselessness from a societal standpoint. He's powerful, accomplished, yet he's miserable.
And then this sage Shinan Yi Liao comes along with some pretty radical advice.
Yeah.
He basically tells Duke Liu to shed his worldly concerns and desires.
Right.
Wouldn't that be difficult for someone in his position?
Sure.
I mean, it's easy to say let go of everything when you're not a powerful duke.
Right. It's a provocative idea.
Yeah.
Shinani Liao compares the duke's coveted position to a fox or a leopard's beautiful fur.
Okay.
They both attract unwanted attention and danger.
Right.
He suggests that true freedom comes from becoming like the mythical people of Jiande.
Okay.
Unburdened by material possessions or social status, they live simply in harmony with nature without the need for elaborate systems of virtue or decorum.
Right.
It begs the question, is the relentless pursuit of more always the best path to a fulfilling life?
That does make you wonder, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It reminds me of that story about Zhuangzi himself visiting the king of Wei, dressed in patched clothes and worn-out shoes.
Right.
And the king asks him, "Why are you so exhausted?"
Yeah.
His response is fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
He says that true exhaustion comes from not living authentically, not from material poverty.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
like he's saying, look, I may appear poor, but I'm living in alignment with my principles. You, on the other hand, might have outward success, but you're weighed down by all that comes with it.
He's basically turning the whole idea of success on its head.
Right.
He seems to be saying that it's more about finding that inner alignment rather than chasing external validation.
Absolutely. Zhuangzi is highlighting the limitations of defining our worth by societal expectations. He encourages us to define success on our own terms,
Okay.
aligning with our true nature rather than chasing what others deem important.
So how do we even begin to shift our perspective in such a profound way?
Right.
I mean, it's easy to say let go of expectations, but how do we actually do that?
Well, Zhuangzi offers several powerful examples of how to navigate this.
Okay.
Think about the analogy he uses: a monkey in its natural habitat is agile and free. But put it in a cage or an unsuitable environment, and its natural skills are hindered.
Okay.
It's the same for us when we try to force ourselves into boxes defined by society. We restrict our own potential.
I see what you mean. So instead of trying to fit into these predetermined molds,
Right.
it's about finding that environment, that way of being where we can truly thrive.
Yeah.
But doesn't that require a certain level of courage?
It
I mean,
can.
going against the grain could be pretty daunting.
It can.
Yeah.
And that's where the story of the unassuming bird comes in.
Okay.
This bird flies at the back of the flock, eats only the leftovers,
Mm-hmm.
and avoids danger by not competing for the best spots.
So it's about choosing a path that might not be flashy or glamorous, but ultimately leads to greater peace and security.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's about finding a way to move through the world without getting caught up in the constant striving and competition that can lead to so much anxiety.
That's a really compelling image. So we've got the tree thriving in its uselessness, the goose highlighting the dangers of rigid thinking,
Right.
the Duke in Zhuangzi himself demonstrating the allure of detachment,
Yeah.
and now this bird showing us the wisdom of humility and acceptance.
Right.
It feels like we're starting to see a pattern emerge here.
We are, and that's what's so brilliant about Wangzi's teachings.
Okay.
He uses these vivid stories and metaphors to guide us towards a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
Right.
They offer a different way of looking at life,
Yeah.
one that emphasizes inner peace and alignment with the natural order of things.
Right.
But it's not always easy to embrace, is it?
No.
There are so many pressures and expectations that pull us in different directions.
Right. I mean, it's one thing to admire these stories, but how do we actually apply these principles to our own life?
Right.
Especially in a world that seems to value the opposite of everything Zhuangzi's talking about.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And that's exactly what we'll explore next. You know, it's interesting to consider how these ideas of uselessness and detachment might apply to something like the creative process.
Okay.
We often think of art and creativity as inherently valuable,
Mm.
but Zhuangzi might challenge us to look deeper.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So are you suggesting that art should be useless?
Well,
Because I think a lot of people would argue that art serves a very important purpose in society.
remember, Zhuangzi encourages us to move beyond rigid categories.
Okay.
It's not about labeling art as useful or useless, but rather asking
Right.
what happens when we create without the pressure of producing something useful or seeking external validation.
Okay.
What if we approached art as a form of play, a way to connect with our inner nature
Yeah.
without the burden of expectations?
I see what you're saying. It's about shifting the focus from the outcome to the process itself.
Exactly.
It makes me think about how many artists get caught up in the need to be successful,
Yeah.
to sell their work, to please critics and audiences.
Right.
It seems like that kind of pressure could really stifle creativity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It takes us away from the pure joy of creation,
Right.
that sense of flow and freedom that often fuels the most inspired work.
Yeah.
Zhuangzi might say that when we release the need for art to be useful in a conventional sense,
Right.
we tap into a more authentic source of inspiration. The art that emerges might be surprising, unconventional, even challenging, but it will be true to the artist's unique vision.
I've definitely experienced that in my own creative endeavors.
Yeah.
When I'm too focused on the end product or what other people will think, I get stuck.
Right.
But when I let go of those expectations and just allow myself to experiment, that's when the real magic happens.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about trusting the process, allowing ourselves to be guided by intuition and inspiration, rather than forcing a preconceived idea,
Right.
letting go of that need to control the outcome to fit into a particular mold.
This reminds me of that story we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
The master woodworker, Gong Shuban, who creates this incredible bell frame simply by following the natural shape of the wood.
That's a perfect example of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
He doesn't impose his will on the material.
Right.
He yields to its inherent form.
Okay.
And in doing so, he creates something truly extraordinary.
Yeah.
It's as if he's collaborating with nature, allowing the wood itself to guide his hand.
It's a beautiful image.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if we could apply that same principle to other areas of life.
Yeah.
What would it look like to approach our work, our relationships,
You're right.
even our challenges with that same sense of yielding and collaboration?
It's a profound question.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Zhuangzi is getting at with this whole idea of embracing uselessness.
Okay.
It's about letting go of the ego's need to control,
Hmm.
to dominate, and instead finding harmony with the natural flow of existence,
Yeah.
trusting that something meaningful, something beautiful can emerge when we surrender to the process.
This is so thought-provoking.
It is.
I'm starting to see how these ancient ideas can be applied to so many areas of modern life.
Right.
But if we're talking about embracing uselessness in a practical sense,
Uh-huh.
how does that play out in our daily lives?
Right.
I mean, we can't just ignore our responsibilities, can we?
Of course not.
Right.
Zhuangzi isn't advocating for irresponsibility,
Okay.
but he is suggesting that we might approach our duties with a different perspective.
Okay.
He encourages a sense of detachment,
Hmm.
a lightness of being that allows us to fulfill our obligations without becoming weighed down by them.
So it's about finding that balance between engagement and detachment.
Precisely.
Not getting so attached to the outcome that we lose our peace of mind,
Right.
but still putting our best effort into what we do.
It's about cultivating that sense of ease and flow,
Yeah.
that harmony that allows us to move through life with grace.
That sounds wonderful in theory, but honestly, it feels pretty challenging to achieve,
It can be.
especially in a world that's so focused on achievement and productivity.
Yep.
We're constantly bombarded with messages telling us to do more, be more, achieve more.
Right.
And it'd be hard to even imagine what that kind of detachment would feel like.
It's true. The modern world can be incredibly demanding.
Yeah.
But that's exactly why Zhuangzi's teachings are so relevant,
Mhm.
so necessary even.
Yeah.
They offer a kind of antidote to that relentless striving,
Right.
a path toward finding peace and contentment amidst all the chaos.
Okay, I'm really intrigued by this idea, but where do we even begin?
Mm-hmm.
How do we actually cultivate this sense of detachment, this uselessness that somehow seems so useful?
Right.
Do you have any suggestions for how we can actually practice this in our everyday lives?
Zhuangzi might say that it begins with awareness,
Okay.
noticing when we're getting caught up in the need to control, to achieve, to be useful in that very narrow sense, and then simply noticing without judgment and gently letting go.
It sounds a lot like mindfulness practice.
It is very similar.
Yes. Cultivating that awareness of our thoughts and emotions without getting swept away by them.
It's about learning to observe our thoughts and emotions without judgment,
Okay.
allowing them to arise and pass away without clinging.
Right.
It's in that space of non-attachment, that willingness to simply be present with what is, that we discover a deeper sense of peace and freedom.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's like creating an inner sanctuary, a place of peace and stillness that we can access no matter what's going on around us.
Exactly.
But doesn't that take a lot of practice?
It does.
I mean, it's one thing to understand these concepts intellectually,
Right.
but integrating them into our daily lives seems like a whole other challenge.
You're absolutely right. It does take practice.
Yeah.
But the more we engage with these ideas,
Okay.
the more we try to embody them in our thoughts, words, and actions, the more natural they become.
So it's not about achieving some kind of perfect state of detachment, but rather a continual process of noticing, adjusting, and letting go.
Exactly. It's a journey, not a destination. Right. And like any journey, it has its ups and downs, its twists and turns.
Yeah.
But the rewards are well worth the effort.
I'm so fascinated by this whole conversation.
Yeah.
I feel like we're just scratching the surface of Zhuangzi's wisdom.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you think would be helpful for us to explore as we try to integrate these teachings into our lives?
Well, there's one final story from Zhuangzi that comes to mind.
Okay.
It might offer a practical way to cultivate that sense of presence and detachment we've been talking about. It's the story of Zhuangzi walking through a forest
Okay.
and coming across a man who's incredibly skilled at catching cicadas
Right.
with a sticky pole.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah.
The man is so focused, so absorbed in what he's doing,
Right.
that he doesn't even seem to notice Zhuangzi standing right there.
Exactly. And Zhuangzi uses this encounter to illustrate the power of
Yeah.
single-pointed concentration, of being fully present in the moment, no matter what the task. He turns to his disciples and asks, imagine applying this level of focus to your own pursuits,
Right.
to your spiritual practice, to the art of living itself. What might be possible?
It makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So it's not just about detachment, but also about cultivating a deep sense of presence,
Right.
of engagement with whatever we're doing,
Yes.
whether it's something challenging or seemingly mundane.
It's about bringing intentionality and focus to every aspect of our lives.
Okay.
It's finding that sense of flow, that joy and meaning in the simplest of actions,
Hmm.
whether we're working on a complex project or just washing the dishes.
That's a really powerful idea. It seems like we've come through a circle, haven't we? We
Yeah.
started by talking about embracing uselessness,
Right.
letting go of those rigid expectations and attachments.
Exactly.
And now we're talking about finding the true usefulness of being fully present in each moment.
Right.
It's almost like these two seemingly opposite ideas are actually two sides of the same coin.
I think you've hit on something really important. It's not about rejecting the world or escaping from our responsibilities,
Right.
but about finding a way to live in harmony with it all,
Oh.
with the world around us, with ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
and with that natural flow of existence that Zhuangzi calls the way.
This has been such an insightful conversation.
It has.
I feel like I'm walking away with a whole new perspective on how to navigate the complexities of life.
Good.
It's a bit daunting, to be honest, but also incredibly inspiring.
I understand. It's a lot to take in. But remember, the journey of integrating these teachings is a lifelong process.
Right.
It's about continually showing up, noticing those moments when we're clinging too tightly,
Mm-hmm.
and gently reminding ourselves to let go, to return to that place of presence and peace.
You've given me so much to think about. And for you listening, we hope this deep dive into the world of Zhuangzi has sparked your own curiosity. Maybe you'll consider how embracing a little bit of uselessness might actually be the key to a more fulfilling and meaningful life. Thanks for joining us.